Good morning. My name is Taryn, and thank you so much for stopping by my channel, Nicole Flower House. 1 year ago, I set out to build an amazing raised bed cut flower garden so I could learn how to create sustainable floral designs using my own homegrown blooms. This has definitely been an interesting week for the garden. Just before Halloween, Hurricane Zeta had dropped in intensity and became a tropical storm. As it made its way through North Carolina, the storm brought a day of very windy and gusty conditions that brought a lot of damage to the garden. I wasn't really expecting the amount of loss I got. We've had several big storms pass through before, so when I heard about this one, I didn't really think much about it. But this was by far the most intense wind we've had this season. I lost most of my zinnias and a lot of dahlias. The poor dahlias that had blooms lost all their petals, and many of the plants broke. It was interesting because as I walked through the garden the next morning, just kind of observing what happened, the direction of the wind gusts was very obvious. A lot of what was left of the garden was blown over, which you may notice throughout the video. The mums, for example, are completely knocked down, but they didn't break, and funny enough, the blooms still look amazing, and I'm still using them to make bouquets. A few days after the windstorm, we experienced very cold weather, near freezing temperatures. We had a freeze warning for both. The night of Halloween was also a full moon, and I recently heard on another YouTube video that the full moon often brings cold spells in the weather. Have you heard this before, or is that what you've experienced? I just thought that was really interesting, and I want to pay attention to it a lot more now, but it just so happened that the night of Halloween was a full moon, and that is when our temperatures dropped to the lowest. And the garden did experience some frost damage. However, it is still a bit of a mystery to me exactly what happened. We either just barely missed a frost, or maybe it was exactly at freezing for just a short period of time. I had 2 layers of frost cloth over most of my dahlias to try to save them for my bouquet arranging event that I had the next few days. Some of the dahlias did just fine, and I was happy to see undamaged blooms popping up when I took the frost cloth off. We had an amazing time at the event and had plenty to work with despite the wind and the cold. That being said, there were other dahlias that did not survive and suffered a lot of frost damage. As you can see throughout the video, there are some spots of damage intermixed with healthy foliage and even buds and blooms. Even the pumpkin vines are a bit mixed. Much of the foliage died back, but it seems like the vines themselves survived, and there are small patches of healthy leaves still popping through. I'm hoping this helps my pumpkins ripen faster. Since the frost killed off so much of the plant cover, the pumpkins are now way more exposed to the sunlight. The one massive pumpkin that I saw first looks like it's starting to turn a little bit, so I'm getting a little more hope with these guys. Also, the one pumpkin that I accidentally broke off the vine a few weeks ago that I've had inside on our dining room table seems to be turning now too. It has spots of orange, and I've been keeping a close eye on it to make sure it doesn't start to get soft or anything, but so far so good, and I did wash it off with soapy water to help prevent mold. So I'm still a little puzzled with what I want to do at the garden at this point. I don't really want to clear everything out and clean it up because obviously there are things that are very much alive, even though they are heavily damaged. Part of me wants to go in and prune everything up and make it look really pretty because honestly, the mix of damaged and healthy things is driving me a little crazy. It's kind of hard to look at my plants when I know they've suffered and I just want to clean them up, make them feel better. I don't know. But that would be a lot of work, and I'm not sure it's worth me doing that right now. The windstorm has really drilled in the lesson to me about having good support systems and infrastructure in place for the flowers. I've known all season long that my dahlias were not doing their best because they've been laying all over the ground unsupported. I've heard other growers warn that a single storm can knock out an entire field of flowers in one swoop if the plants aren't supported. And now I've seen that for myself in my own garden. I'm also feeling very grateful though because I did have a lot of my stuff survive, even if it's leaning quite a bit. But maybe now I should be working more on infrastructure and support systems instead of prettying the garden up. Maybe I'll do a little of both. We should see. This week I'm going to get back to working on the Dahlia Patch project. That means I'll be moving dirt into the new boxes, getting the T-posts into the ground, and getting the Hortonova netting set up. I was considering doing hoops and wire mesh similar to the other garden boxes, but I think the T-posts and netting will be better since the dahlias are so tall. I'm also trying to rearrange the garden plan so that taller flowers are in the shorter boxes closer to the ground, and the shorter plants are in the taller 18-inch boxes. I think I'm going to use the hoops and green mesh this year to see how that goes on the taller boxes that have the shorter plants in them. And if that isn't enough support, I might transition the entire garden over to T-posts and netting. But I think I'd like to try the other method first since I already have the hoops in place. Now here is a really good look at those beautiful mums. I know garden mums can seem kind of elementary and not very exciting, but these varieties are so pretty. The pom-pom nature of the mums that I have here, the Kelvin Mandarin, just really remind me of dahlias. And so, of course, I like them. And they're kind of like giant gomphrena. I don't know, I just can't get over these. They came out so pretty. And the change that I've seen in them from having them in those silly little pots that I had into the garden bed have just transformed these plants, and I'm so lucky that they came out this good. Here is a patch of marigolds that didn't suffer hardly any damage from the cold weather. And they're right next to this poor patch of marigolds that just did not survive. So again, just kind of a funky mix of healthy plants and dead plants all mixed together. The pumpkins very exposed, so hoping they ripen up. This Dahlia patch suffered a lot of cold damage. It's kind of out on its own with no protection, and I was not able to get this one covered up. It's definitely on its way out, and it's where I had my lovely Wizard of Oz dahlias planted, so I'll be looking forward to transplanting those tubers. And mixed in this bed here, I don't know if you can see them, I actually have asparagus growing. It was taken over by a squash vine, so it was hard to see in other videos, but here are my asparagus fronds doing just fine. Now here in the veggie patch, I've even found some volunteer peppers that have sprouted. I cut down my pepper plants way earlier in the season because I was just overwhelmed with them. But they're trying to sprout back up, and I've heard that you can overwinter pepper plants. So I might do some experimenting and just see how long I can get those pepper plants to last if I keep them covered with frost cloth. And maybe in the spring I'll have really early growth on those. Not sure. What do you guys think? Have you overwintered your pepper plants before? I'm in zone 7B, so we'll see what happens. Well, that is all for today's garden update. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and the best way you can support my channel is to subscribe and share it with your flower-loving friends. Thank you so much for being here and taking interest in my cut flower garden, and I'll see everyone next week. Bye!